Hello.
How are
I'm good. I am back. I guess you're still at your parents'.
we? We're getting ready. We're getting our land ready to maybe build a house. And so we're hanging out here and, we're in the process of moving back into the trailer and we've got internet coming to get us set up with internet out there. Because, can't work without that. So yeah, we'll be here another week or so. Yeah. So yay. How was your weekend?
Weekend. It was good. The days blur.
Yes. Yes, I do. I do know.
I remember when I
I do
first
know.
started working in the ER when I was like 19. There was a family member one day who was like, "Hey, TGIF, right?" And I was like, "This is a 24/7 facility."
Right? What does that
We don't
mean?
work
I
banking
know.
hours. Like
Right?
I've always had a job where if anything, the weekend is like tougher and more busy. Anyways.
Right. I love it. I love it. Well, I'm excited to be here today. It's another week. I had a great restful week, and I hope everybody else did too. Whether it was the weekend or not, hopefully you got to rest and recharge your batteries, right? In some way, shape, or form.
Some capacity.
Kayla, I know, right? In some capacity for sure. So, Kayla, why don't you kick us off? Tell us what we're talking about today.
So today is all about perspective and empathy. And our quote comes to us from Mohsin Hamid, who is a British Pakistani author. And it is empathy is about finding echoes of another person in yourself.
Mm, I like that. I think that's a very eloquent way to say that.
Yeah,
It's one of
I
the
gotta be honest, it took me a minute to like chew on it. A lot of her quotes, like I read them and immediately I'm just like, oh yes, I love that. This one I read and I was like, echoes. I don't love that. But I do get the sense of it.
yes, yeah. And I think so. One of the things that I wrote down, actually the top thing that I wrote down to talk about was that empathy isn't just the listening. I think a lot of times we associate empathy with listening to people, but it's the next layer, right? It's that not just listening, but actually feeling with
Mhm.
them and sitting in their feelings. Um, it's being present enough to hear behind the words and to feel the emotion behind whatever it is that they're saying. And I think for me, I think this is one of the true gifts of advocacy, because I think that most of us have come into this work because we do this,
Mhm.
right? And I don't know about you, but I don't always know how to not do that.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's like empathy, I think for me is pretty deep. And I don't want to speak for everybody, but I would be really surprised if there weren't a lot of us that have this tendency to take things to this feeling of empathy where we're actually in the emotions of the conversation, of the situation, of all of this. What is your take on that?
Yeah, I think you're probably right. I do think that in this space, we probably all gravitate towards having that natural inclination for empathy. But I do just want to kind of dissect what you said a little bit because like I identify as somebody who it's actually, I take it, it's a little bit of a challenge for me to try to like break down and explain empathy because it is one of those things that is just such a kind of natural, intuitive, hardwired process for me. I more identify with it as the concept of being able to like step into that person's shoes. Like I almost
Mm,
immediately kind of think like what it would be like to be in that situation, in that position. I do that so much to the extent that like, it's funny. My husband laughs at me, and my son is just like me, but we'll like watch movies or video games, and we are like in it. Like we're
Yeah.
seeing it as if ourselves. But I do want to draw a distinction, because you also, there's a difference between being able to imagine yourself in that situation and then kind of think about what it might be like to be trying to, navigate that, versus actually taking those feelings on in your body. And I think that that distinction is what's really important in our work, given that if we're working under the assumption that most of us probably have that natural inclination for empathy. Because I think when we take on those feelings as our own internally, that's when we put ourselves kind of in hot water, and we start to dilute the impact that we can have on the client. Because you can really lose yourself there, and emotional burnout is a whole real thing.
It's a real thing. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's important, the distinction that you just made in regards to that. Because it can get us in trouble. And I also think, ooh, what a double-edged sword for a superpower, right? This moment of being able to do it and then identifying, how much we want to carry of that emotion. But I do think it gives us it does, and it is a double-edged sword. That's all there is to it. Because I think about all of the times that it causes us to be on the phone for 2 hours instead of 25 minutes, and all of those things. I think that, I guess I just want to take this opportunity to talk about not letting the pendulum swing too far the other way, right? Like finding that middle ground where we can feel and be empathetic, and we can also still have boundaries and protect our own emotional health, which I think is really important when we talk about empathy, because that can be, maybe that's the work of this quote, is to find that balance between empathy and our boundaries, and feeling good so that we can continue to move things forward. Because I also think that because we feel this empathy, it also motivates us to do a lot of the actual work that we do, right? And so there is this, I don't know, I'm feeling like I'm getting into this loosey-goosey place of not being able to talk about it in concrete words. Kayla, you're really good about putting this stuff in words. Can you help me here?
Yeah. Well, I mean, so something came up for me as you were talking that I'm going to share, and hopefully it makes a little bit more sense of where I'm going with this. But the disclaimer at the same time is like, yeah, of course this is loosey goosey, because like we're not talking about like literally anything concrete right now. But I once heard the description that, when thinking of empathy and like how to put boundaries on it so that we stay in a place where it is not only serving ourselves, but actually serving that person that we are trying to be empathetic for. It's almost as if, imagine that you stumbled upon this person, we'll just say client for the sake of the story. You stumbled upon your client and they are 10 feet down in a hole. Well, if we go too far with that empathetic response of seeing ourselves in their situation and really taking on their emotions, it's almost the equivalent of climbing in the hole with them. Like, you can go down there and give them a hug, and for a minute that's going to make them feel better, and then you'll really know what it's like to be in that hole with them. But after 10 minutes, you guys are going to look at each other and go, well, great, now we're both in this hole. And
Right.
that
Yes.
isn't ultimately serving anybody. And so, what we really need to do is not to climb in the hole and give them a hug, which is almost kind of like the immediate reaction, right? But we need to find a ladder that we can drop down. We see where they are, and figure out a way to meet them there without that self sacrifice. And truly seeing them where they are and being able to build that ladder to help pull them out is going to serve them and protect yourself a lot more than climbing in the hole.
I love that. Thank you. Yes, that's exactly what I was looking for there. Because that is the balance. That is the balance,
Now,
right?
if
And
only
I
it was
think
as simple as holes and ladders.
right, exactly. But I also think that this is where your community comes in too, right? I mean, because if again, we're not alone in trying to identify the ladder per se, for lack of a better term, but we're not alone in either building the ladder or locating the ladder or moving the ladder and getting it positioned correctly and all of the things. We have each other, right? And that's what I love about the community is that we can reach into each other's resources and say, hey, Kayla, I need a 10-foot ladder. I only have a 7-foot ladder. Do you have a 10-foot ladder that I can borrow? And are you willing to come over and help me do this? And like I said, I think that finding that balance really is the superpower that we bring to our clients, their families, and the situations that they're in, because we at least have a toolbox. We have a community of resources. We have all kinds of things that can help us. And if we stay centered in the right mindset and balance our empathy with all of these resources and tools, we really can and are on a daily basis the solution to a lot of people's problems. Um,
Absolutely. Thinking
you
about,
know,
I was just going further with this kind of client in the hole
hey, go with it.
description that we're talking about. It's our duty to find that ladder, to find the ladder that's long enough, to find the ladder with the rungs close enough together that they can actually climb it. And I think if we're keeping with this analogy, so many people who come to us are getting from the rest of the healthcare system that, what hole? I don't see a hole. Or you can climb out of that, or
Right.
something to that extent. And it just
Mm-hmm.
further goes to, because I do feel that kind of across the board, there is sort of a general lack of empathy within the conventional healthcare system, multifactorial. I think
Right. Absolutely. Yeah.
provider burnout and like being
Yes.
overworked is probably like the
Yes.
highest contributing factors.
Of course.
When you have when a doctor or nurse or therapist, whoever you want to talk about, has the capacity to do a really great job taking care of, I don't know, we'll just say 5 patients, but then they have to take care of 8. Well, unfortunately, empathy
That
is one of the things that goes out the window because it requires time. And when you have to choose between spending time to really be with somebody or making sure everybody's got meds, well, one of those things
right.
unfortunately has to be triaged above the other. But it's so widespread that most of our clients, their interactions with the healthcare system is as if nobody cares. That
Right.
half the time that they're, like I said, being told that they're not even in a hole in the first place.
Right.
So I think for them to finally come across somebody like ourselves who recognizes and validates that they're in the hole, it it can be very easy for them to be like, oh my God, you see the hole too, come here. And like
Yes.
start to almost want to drag you in. Like,
Yes.
So
Yes.
for
Yes.
ourselves, like we need to be mindful of that. And like so many things we talk about here on Mindset Monday, like it all just starts with the awareness. And so if
Yes.
this conversation, if you identify as somebody who is kind of struggling with the pendulum swinging too far the other way and perhaps climbing into the hole with your clients, um, one thing that might be really helpful, either when you're starting with somebody new or if there's just a particularly challenging moment going on with your client, is kind of setting up these intentional check-ins through the day after a phone call or whatever it may be, of hey,
Mhm.
like, how am I feeling right now? Am I climbing in the hole or am I dropping down a ladder? Like, am I actually feeling in my body that tenseness and that stress even after that conversation is over? Because if so, then you might unintentionally be carrying some of their emotional weight. We can't carry their emotional weight. That's,
Right.
to me, one of the places this boundary has to be drawn. Like, we can have that conversation with them and feel it in that moment. But for me, when that phone is hung up, or you walk through that door, or you're done the appointment and you're finally back in your car, like that's the time it has to stop right there. Like, you have to be able to let it go. I practiced this for a long time, particularly when I started working in ICU. It can be it's very easy to start to get really
Sure.
overwhelmed by, people are
I
dying
can only imagine.
constantly.
Right.
Like
I know.
that's your
Yeah.
everyday life, is people are dying and
Right.
their families are upset. Like, we have more bad stories than good stories that come out of ICU. Um, and so that's when I started having to really identify and get intentional about, like, how do I separate myself from this so that, like, I'm not just so completely depleted that I can't carry on? And
Right.
so that was a thing for me, like leaving the unit at the end of the day. Like, I would remind myself, like, I'm so sorry that that's all the things that those people, are going through, that those families are going through, the patients themselves. And I'm so grateful that that's not mine to carry forward, and that I served them in the best capacity that I could. And now this stays here. And like intentionally drawing that delineation and breathing. And I usually pair it with gratitude that for like that I get to go home to my family, and that, I'm so grateful we're not dealing with this situation right now. Although, there could be a time, nobody ever knows. But that kind of really checking in and having those physical barriers translate into emotional barriers, was key to me. All that to be said, it's a lot easier to do when you're punching a clock. When you're working for yourself, particularly with people who, and you have ongoing relationships with, it becomes more difficult and more imperative.
Yeah. For sure. For sure. Because I think that the consequences of not protecting your boundaries are so much higher when we're working for ourselves, and the consequences of not connecting and working and meeting our clients with this place of empathy are also really high. Those stakes are also very high, right? Because our clients
Mm-hmm.
need us to do that. I do. There's something I wanted to make sure we talked about when it comes to empathy. The thing that I have found a game changer in my practice, specifically in my life as well, but specifically in my practice, is that when we practice good empathy and we have these boundaries around it, it allows us to connect with somebody before correcting them. And I
Mm.
just had this happen in a sales call because I had a gentleman called me and he's got this bill and he has an employer group plan primary and Medicare secondary. And he says, I shouldn't have to pay anything and I'm getting these bills. And so he's telling me all of these things. And I latched onto that sentence because I was like, oh, yeah, that may not be true. And so I had to find a way to connect with this man, right? And validate where he is and spend some moments in that with him. And then I was able to say, and I just want to share with you, I know that you understand that you shouldn't owe anything, and that very well may be the case. However, there are times when your primary may not pay something and Medicare also may not pay it, and it may fall to your responsibility. It was great because I was able to do that. And this man was very astute. And he said, thank you very much for resetting the expectations on that.
Mm.
And that popped out because I was able to say that to him with compassion and care. And because I
Mm-hmm.
had shown the empathy first with him
Mm-hmm.
and sat in that moment with him, he allowed me to make that correction, right? In that relationship. So again, we go back to everything is built on these relationships, and the things that we talk about in our Mindset Monday and the things that we're working on are all only set to improve all of our relationships. We talk about them a lot of times because as advocates, we need some extra additional support in this area as entrepreneurs and business folks. But when we're able to execute it, it really is pretty amazing, the way that relationships can unfold. And, I've had relationships where I've been able to say some things that without the empathy would have never gone on, and the
Mm-hmm.
relationship would have ended, right? Because it's hard sometimes. We're running out of time, and I want to make sure we have some time to do a sneak peek into the vault. So the only other thing that I wanted to share on that is that empathy, listen guys, it's good practice for all of the things that we've been talking about here this morning. It's good business to provide empathy to your clients, to your potential clients, to your colleagues, to everybody in your world. It's not just good practice, it's good business. And I think that in today's culture, it's one of the things that we see lacking in so many
Mm-hmm.
places, not just healthcare,
Yeah.
right? But across the board, we see people in a rush to check boxes off of lists, to get things done, to move to the next task, to do all of the things. And if we can show up with a little bit more empathy than the general world has to offer, it sets everything up in our practices for success. Because I think the world's
Mm-hmm.
craving more empathy, more connection, more one-on-one conversations, real relationships. Yes, Chris says people just want to be heard and validated. There it
You're
is.
like a mind reader, Chris. I was literally about to say
Yes,
that. Yeah, and you know
love
what?
it.
It's so interesting. Like I feel like that is just going to continue to grow as we see AI taking over more and more things. I honestly, I believe that moving like in the next couple of years, it's the human element that is going to start to distinguish businesses from others as AI replace it. They get AI doing job interviews now. Like that's insane. And I just watched this thing like so apparently the recruiters are using AI, but then now like you can actually set up and train your own AI to do interviews for you. So it's just AI interviewing AI. It's insane.
Right? It is insane. It is
So yeah, it's just going to
insane.
create even more craving for human
Yes.
connection. So
Right.
yeah.
Because it is the only thing that is completely like irreplaceable, right? I had to think about what word that was, but irreplaceable. Yeah, I think that it's true. And so learning how to leverage this without losing ourselves, and like you said, the self-sacrifice, that is the sweet spot of what we do and how we interact and all of the things that we bring that nobody else can bring. I love this. So, what do you think? Do anybody want to see a sneak peek at the video? If the membership opens on Friday, and I am so excited about it. I really would love to share. I know I don't know how this is going to go because we have never done screen share on here. So let's see how this
We're about to
works.
find out.
I know, right? Let's see. I don't want to do that one. Let me see. Let me pull this out and to present, and I want to look at share screen. I don't know. Oh, here we go. Okay, I'm gonna have to do a different. Here we go.
Oh, there we go.
Oh, look at this. Okay, so here it is, y'all. Over here on the left-hand side, you'll start to see a tab that says the video vault. I'm inside the circle platform. And inside the video vault, you'll see right here, there are already 72 lessons. These are edited lessons down to 15, they're anywhere between 15 and 30 minutes. The longest one I think is 27 or 28 minutes. The shortest is like 15 and some change. So they're small micro learning sessions. And each month you'll get a specific drop into the vault. And this month for August, so you'll see that we're doing from price shoppers to autonomy seekers, sales techniques for independent advocates. And this is one of the, here we go. When we open this up, there's the video, and you can make it full screen if you want. Today we are going to be talking. I didn't mean to do that, but we can do that. You can watch the video full screen, but here's the kicker. You can see this one's 29 minutes. Here are the resources that go along with this. So there's the independent sales script framework, complete conversation templates. So if you're struggling with how to position your independence in your sales process, you click this and you get the entire script, the framework, how to open it, the actual words, the positioning response. If they mention hospital advocates, how you can talk about that. A list of all of the things, how to handle free versus paid objections. So if somebody says to you, why should I pay you when I can get help for free? There's a response template, things for you to say.
Beyond you get what you pay for.
Right, beyond, right, exactly. A little bit more finesse behind that, right? Yeah. Oh, here, I forgot to share it. This is what it actually looks like when you open up the resource. There's a PDF that has all of the things in it. And then I wanted to show, then there's a worksheet, capability over credentials. There's a worksheet there. Did I stop sharing?
I think you did.
No. Oh, okay. Well, shoot. How do I get back? I don't always know what I'm doing. Yes, I do. See, I told you we've never done this before, so we'll give it a shot.
It's not that you don't know what you're doing. It's StreamYard is not the most intuitive platform.
This, I'll tell you, this is one of the things that I'm really excited about is this Autonomy Seeker Prospect ID Guide. This is, remember we talked a couple of weeks ago, we talked about how to identify someone who's just shopping based on price versus somebody who's shopping for true value, which is who we're looking for. This guide is going to help you identify this from your inquiries, literally right down to the questions you can ask, system experience questions. These are discovery questions that reveal autonomy seekers, which are your ideal clients. Things like, have you worked with patient advocates or navigators before? How did you approach important decisions? What specific outcome are you hoping to achieve? These are going to help you identify people who are literally ready to pay for your services. Super excited about Nicole. That. Yeah.
And that's just this one video. Oh my gosh.
Right. Exactly. Each video has resources like this that will help you actually implement whatever we're talking about into your practice immediately. And like I said, there are 72 lessons in there, and this is just the newest one. We're currently working on last week's call to get it uploaded as well. So I'm just going to say, I am super duper excited about this. The price point on this is crazy amazing. It's $50 a month. There's no, why can't I find what I'm looking for?
Well, now we're going.
I know. There we go. Okay, there we go. The price point is $50 a month, no contract, no time. You can jump in and
$50 a month for basically a self-paced build your practice coaching program.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's from somebody who's actually built a profitable practice. That is insane value.
I know, right? So make sure it opens up Friday. Make sure that you get on the wait list so that you get early access to that. And then we'll see you inside the vault. I can't wait. I can't wait for you to get in and get your hands on this stuff and tell me how it's working for you. So I love it. Thank you so much. We are out of time. Let's talk about our mindset challenge before we go. we'll redirect back into empathy and talk about our mindset challenge before we go. The one that I wrote down is I want to know one way that you are going to slow down and validate someone else without rushing in to fix it this week, and keep
Yeah.
your boundaries. That's kind of where I'm at with this. What about you, Kayla? Any
Yeah,
challenge?
I think mine is just to identify a transition point for yourself where you can put in place that gut check of putting their emotions down and putting those thoughts to the side and transitioning back to what is actually yours to carry.
I love it. All right, y'all. This has been great as always. We will be back next Monday, 9 a.m. Eastern Time. In between time, don't forget we have a free call on Wednesday at 4 p.m. Eastern, and we'll see you inside the circle. We'll look forward to hearing about where you're slowing down and how you're applying empathy this week. Everybody have a great week. We'll see you next time. Bye, guys.